Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting PBS NC.
I knew it was something special. It took about 3 months I realized it was something real special. But not, I had no idea as far as it being an atomic bomb.
We did a little bit of a daredevil thing of getting down that low. We were really not supposed to.
What'd you see?
It was an area that was just charred. It was, if you could imagine, a blackened area.
Finally, after almost 4 years of fighting, after losing almost 300,000 American lives, World War II was over. It ended when it did, because of something that happened 1 week earlier, on August 6th, 1945. The United States dropped the first atomic bomb. It took the bomb 43 seconds to fall 31,300 feet. And for many, that free fall marks a seam in history, created by a propeller-driven B-29 aircraft, bearing a weapon unlike anything the world had seen.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. That bomb has more power than 20,000 tons of TNT.
Colonel Tom Farabee of Mocksville, North Carolina, was the bombardier aboard the Enola Gay. I met Tom Farabee in 1998.
You got the call to become part of one of these two crews in April?
No, it was last August of '44.
So a year before the mission took place?
Just about exactly a year, yeah.
Tom Farabee was born November 9th, 1918, in Davie County, North Carolina. He was one of 11 children. He and his brother Bill were in their early 20s when the United States entered World War II.
I arrived at Pearl Harbor April the 5th, 1942.
The Farabee brothers grew up on a farm in Mocksville during the Great Depression. Like many families at the time, they were just getting by. Their story is much like other World War II veteran stories we've collected over the decades.
Predominantly agricultural state, big in tobacco, big in cattle, big in cotton in the Piedmont region.
We were poor. North Carolina was poor because we depended on an agrarian economy. So our people worked hard. They were real hard, didn't have a whole lot of money, but they had a lot of character and integrity.
A lot of people were tenant farmers, and my dad was a tenant farmer. We grew our own food. We didn't buy much from the grocery store. Sugar and coffee is about all. We didn't know any different, to tell you the truth. It was hard times for everybody.
In early 1942, hard times lingered, but so did memories of the last European war, then known as the Great War.
You see, it hadn't been that long since World War I, and the American people didn't want to get involved. Germany was bombing the fool out of England, but still we didn't want to get involved. But after Pearl Harbor, Roosevelt declared war on Germany and Japan.
It will be recorded that the distance of Hawaii from Japan makes it obvious that the attack was deliberately planned many days or even weeks ago.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii by air. The Japanese have attacked the American naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii.
Japan has attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, and Manila, the Philippine Islands.
Heard that first bulletin You can't imagine what happened in your thinking that very moment. You knew what was going to happen to you. And you knew that all you'd been witnessing and hearing about and reading about, here it is now, it's our war.
So everybody was interested in ending the war. So a lot of people volunteered then, just like I did.
More than 360,000 North Carolinians served in World War II.
The enemy fights tenaciously, but he is reeling from the power and speed of the Allied attack.
I didn't want to be a foot soldier. I volunteered for the Navy to keep from being drafted. Well, I went to Charlotte and signed up, and I went from Charlotte to Raleigh, and from Raleigh to Norfolk, Virginia. And when I finished boot camp, I wanted to get into aviation any way that I could, and I put in for aviation machinist school. And when I finished that schooling, I went right straight to San Francisco, and from there to Pearl Harbor. So I was just an enlisted man, but still I was considered a plane captain. I serviced the plane when it was on the ground, and when it was in the air, I flew with it as a gunner.
While Bill enlisted in the Navy, his brother Tom joined the U.S. Army Air Forces.
He had an injury in high school football. When he went to flight school in Texas, at high altitude, that knee would stiffen up and he couldn't work the rudder pedal. So they washed him out. He came home and helped my dad on the farm in the summer of 1941. And that fall, he went back to bombardier school and became a bombardier. That's how he became a bombardier.
Tom Farabee was a success in bombardier school. He was stationed in Europe, where he'd meet Colonel Paul Tibbets.
He was in Tibbets's squadron. He was Tibbets's lead bombardier. They were shot up on every mission that they were on and barely made it back to England. He had 63 combat missions in Europe and North Africa before Tibbets brought him back to train to drop the atomic bomb. It took a lot of training to get prepared to drop the atomic bomb. And in Tibbets's book that I was reading, he said that he was the bravest man he'd ever seen in combat.
Tom Farabee's combat service in Europe caught the eye of top military leaders in Washington, especially General Hoyt Vandenberg.
He told me they had something planned for me, but he didn't know what it was. So they sent me to Ardmore, Oklahoma, where they were processed crude and B-17s back over the seas. And I stayed there about a month, and I got a message from General Armstrong. And he said, I'm having you transferred to my B-29 wing in Grand Island, Nebraska. So about an hour later, I got a top secret message from Washington, highest urgency. It would transfer me to Window, Utah. So I got checked on it, and it was a fighter base. And I arrived, and nobody on the base, and no airplanes, nothing. Went up to headquarters, and there's a lieutenant. In fact, he was from North Carolina, and I was secretary. And I told him I was supposed to report to somebody in about. They said, well, you can't, they're in a meeting.
At the time, Farabee did not know just what the people in that room would be known for.
Well, about 10 minutes later, Paul stuck his head out of the room where they were having the meeting. So General Groves and Dr. Oppenheimer, Dr. Compton, and I forget the other, it was another doctor, scientist, but they were all briefing Paul. And then they called me in and gave me a little briefing, and And I went out and discussed with Paul, and he said, well, they said we could get 2 crews by name anywhere in the world.
Tom Farabee spent nearly 1 year training for the mission, not fully aware of what that mission was.
There was some dissension among some of the people in the General May's headquarters about Paul being capable of flying it because he hadn't been practicing with me. So I called him and told him he better get over there, that things were not too good. No reason why that we should train together in a B-29, because no difference in dropping a bomb from a B-29 and a B-17. And we'd flown many missions together in B-17s, so it wasn't necessary. And because, like I say, people make all the special training stuff. There's no difference in the world dropping an atomic bomb than a regular bomb. The same bomb site.
Even with the weight?
Well, I dropped some big bombs before, but the weight was a little different, yeah. But I dropped a lot there with this other crew with the same weight. But no, that made no difference whatsoever.
But the process was the same?
Yeah, there's no difference.
As August 6, 1945 approached, the crew transferred to Guam ahead of the Hiroshima assignment.
We didn't know the date until actually called at the briefing. Now, well, Paul and I went up to Guam about 3 or 4 days before and went over the targets with General May and his staff and decided on the heading and everything would go in. And I actually decided on the primary target. So that was the first time I knew of a date that it was approaching. I don't remember where they exactly said August the 6th when we was up there with him or not, but I knew it was approaching when we'd be going.
Total secrecy surrounded the mission. The air crew was briefed on their assignment 1 day before the atomic bomb dropped.
Everything was so secret. You can't imagine how secret everything was. He just told his mother in a letter that he would be gone for a while, but for her not to worry, that he'd be all right.
Each time I'd fly something, we'd call it drop it, I'd call it a unit or a gadget, never a bomb. In fact, I never heard the word atomic used until I landed back at 10 after the mission.
The B-29 was named for the pilot, Colonel Paul Tibbetts' mother, 1 day before the bombing run. The bomb, called Little Boy, weighed 4.5 tons.
Normally, on a regular mission, other people would load the bomb. You wouldn't even be around the airplane when they loaded them, actually. And all I would do was just go to briefing and get the weather information, the winds, and the altitude I was supposed to drop from and everything, and briefing on the anti-aircraft or fighters expected and stuff like that.
At 2:45 in the morning, Sunday, August 6th, 1945, the Enola Gay left Tinian Island. It was a 6.5-hour, nearly 1,600-mile flight to Hiroshima, Japan.
You have an eyepiece about that size, I guess, and it's kind of a telescope. And you look through that, and you can put your crosshairs out about 25 miles, as I remember, ahead of your aircraft. I'd have the drift already set in and everything, and when it locked on the target, I didn't have much to do. But you could see, well, from about 60 miles, I could see the city. But there's about 25 miles before I'd actually get my crosshairs on it and start synchronizing. But I was already lined up with it perfectly. That's another thing I insisted on, that we go upwind, give me more time. Because some of the staff and the General Mates, I wanted to go downwind to not be in there not as much time. But I said, I'm going up there to hit something. I'm not just going up there. So I want to go upwind and where I'll have more time to synchronize everything. So we did.
After synchronizing the target and making sure the bomb bay doors would open, Farabee waited as the plane flew closer to its drop destination. The aircraft slowly climbs to its bombing altitude over Iwo Jima. Shortly after 8 in the morning, a weather plane in Hiroshima reports that the weather is good over the city.
I was convinced they knew what they were doing. I didn't know exactly what they were doing, but I was convinced they knew what they were doing. But we saw the still photos of the Almagarta thing before we went. So all they did was to stay away from the clouds, so we knew approximately what it was going to look like from the still photo they showed us of the Almagarta thing.
And around 8:15 in the morning, the doors opened, and the 9,000-pound bomb fell for 43 seconds before detonating 1,700 feet above ground. The 12-man crew of the Enola Gay had been instructed to wear special green goggles to protect their eyes from the atomic flash. And everyone, except Paul Tibbets, the pilot, and Tom Farabee, followed those instructions.
I wanted to see if it was falling clear, and I was looking down, watching it. So when it went off, it blinded us just momentarily. But when it went off, we were going in the opposite direction, but it still blinded us. So when I saw it go off, and Admiral Parks and I were supposed to look and decide where it was a full order detonation or not. So he was back in the radio room, and I got up and went back and discussed it with him, and we looked at it as we went by it, and it was obvious that it was a full order detonation. So that's what I was just happy that it worked.
This was the first time in history an atomic bomb had been used, and none of the Enola Gay crew could know what to expect when that bomb detonated.
First thing we noticed also was a kind of a bump, 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 and I thought it was flak. I turned to Paul and I said, so-and-so is shooting at us. And then about that time, we both realized it was a concussion from the bomb. But it wasn't anything bad.
But that's something you hadn't felt before?
No. It felt to me like, but I'd felt big bursts of flak close to it in Europe. You got kind of a crunch like that. And I thought that's what it was. But then it turned out it was the bomb concussion of the bomb. It was planned properly, and it was flown properly, so there just wasn't much to it, except it was something special. And it never been done before where the other bomb had been exploded, or one like it. But mine had never been tested, so when it went, I was just happy that it went off.
We are now prepared to destroy more rapidly and completely every productive enterprise the Japanese have in any city. We shall destroy their docks, their factories, and their communications. Let there be no mistake. We shall completely destroy Japan's power to make war.
Despite warnings of total destruction, the Japanese refused to surrender. 3 days later, on August 9th of 1945, another B-29 dropped a second atomic bomb, this time on Nagasaki.
When I came back off that thing, I knew it was something big, but I never realized it would last as long as it has and change the world as much as it has. It made quite an impact, much more than I ever realized at the time.
And I hadn't heard from him in 6 months. A friend of mine that was from Alabama, he got a letter from home telling him that Tom Farabee was the bombardier, and he told me. Now, this was about a week after he dropped the bomb.
On August 14th, 1945, after 2 atomic bomb drops within 3 days, Japan fully surrendered.
One rainy night, laying on my cot, heard all this screaming and shouting and yelling, and the bomb had been dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the war was over.
At that time, we were getting ready to go to Japan, but they dropped the bomb, and that's what saved our neck. It was a happy time, I can tell you.
A lot of people were partying and drinking, and this chaplain had a service the next morning, and he said, "This is going to be a great responsibility because you're going to leave from here and you're going to have to be responsible for what happens in our country and a part of the rest of the world that's going to have to move on from these wars."
North Carolinians across the state celebrated the announcement that war was over.
People went crazy, even in small towns. I remember the people shouting and hollering and dancing, just overjoyed that the war was over. Those that hadn't been killed were coming home.
The guy who managed Rosie's 5 and dime opened the store and gave away every U.S. flag he had. And my mom kept that flag with a notation on it. It was from VJ Day. It was a time of relief. Stores had holidays for 2 days. Everybody just celebrated.
It was after the mission that Farabee and the crew learned how effective they had been. The bomb missed its target by a scant 700 feet, but that made no difference to anyone on the ground and anyone who heard about it across the world.
It was just nothing, no life there.
Roy Coates of Smithfield was a pilot during World War II. He was one of the first to fly over Hiroshima after the bombing.
We did a little bit of a daredevil thing of getting down that low. We were really not supposed to.
What'd you see?
It was an area that was just charred. It was, if you could imagine, a blackened area.
Approximately 140,000 people died at Hiroshima, many from the initial blast, but also from radiation.
If the same circumstance, I'd do it tomorrow, without any hesitation.
Anybody now is condemning the United States for the actions that was taken at that time. It bothers me.
I have seen B-24s, Marine B-24s, that were operating out of Guadalcanal when I was there, come in with the plane shot all to hell. Blood splattered. Clear to the rudder. You don't get over that.
And I visited the survivors of Bataan and Corregidor in the Death March about 5 or 6 years ago. And I'm going up this summer. Spent a couple of days with them on their anniversary. And to hear those people tell their stories, I mean, that's awful. I mean, it's horrible the way they were treated. And, well, they would all have been killed too if this thing hadn't gone off. If we'd ever invaded, they'd been killed immediately.
This mission liberated those people.
Yeah. Well, as far as right then, I mean, eventually some of them might have would have been, but they told me that not one of them would have lived through the winter because they were froze to death. Because they were so weak and had no heat or anything. Even if they hadn't killed them. But if we'd invaded, they're going to kill them anyway.
In May of 1991, Tom spoke to a crowd in his hometown of Mocksville.
Tom spoke to the people out here at Mocksville on Veterans Day, and different ones went up to him and told him that they wouldn't be alive today if he hadn't dropped that bomb. I'm sorry that I get emotional. The only time that I ever saw Tom get emotional was when they unveiled that marker up here at the old home place. He had nerves of steel.
Well, talk about it a lot, but something like this, I mean, I don't mind at all, because I'd like to see some people in North Carolina get a little recognition. And you know.
You're a hero to a lot of people.
Well, I hope they figured I did to help do my part. And
but you don't like being called a hero.
No, I don't feel I'm a more hero than anybody else. You just happen to be on a certain mission. I mean, I don't think I did anything that above and beyond what the normal person would do.
But still, it is a mission that almost...
Yeah, I understand that, yeah. And it made a much more impact than I realized at the time I did it. And it seemed like it's getting more complicated as it goes along. But there's like I say, there's many people in North Carolina that did just as, maybe it didn't cause the impact as what mine did, but they still did their part.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting PBS NC.